I hand that up, but honestly, I can't remember what I said. It's the part of the day that I can't remember at all. I do remember that the next day I wrote Harriet an email sent care of Tom Doherty, which said, "Dear Harriet, I promise I'm not an idiot," even though I sounded like one, because I could barely stutter out a sentence. But I did get out some sort of yes. I seem to recall that. And then we hung up, and I was left wondering, what did I just do? In fact, I spent that night, I could not sleep because I was terrified of what I had just done. And I tossed and turned a lot that night thinking about what had just happened, and I came to two very, very frightening conclusions. The first of which was that I realized that night nobody could write the book that Robert Jordan would have written. In fact, nobody could write as good a book as Robert Jordan would have written. I realized that in a small way, no matter how good a book I wrote, I was setting myself up to fail because I could not replace him. And I still honestly believe that. I believe that the book you're holding cannot, by definition, be as good as the one he would have written because he should have been here to write it. And that was a very frightening thing to learn, or to realize that I just couldn't. And then I realized something else. I realized that I didn't know any other authors in the entire world who had read these books and loved these books as much as I had. There are people out there that are better writers than me. There are people out there who are bigger fans than me. But there is nobody who has both. And I realized that as a writer and as a person who loved the series, the very next best thing to having Robert Jordan write it himself was to write it and not screw it up. Because I knew that of all the people in the world, at least in that case, it would be in the hands of somebody who loved the series, who knew the characters like their best friends. And I thought of other works that this had been done with, and some turned out okay, some turned out terrible, and I realized that if I said no to this, and it went into the hands of someone who was just looking for a paycheck, and it didn't turn out right, that it would be partially my fault. In essence, I realized that of all the people in the world, I would screw this book up the least. Does that make any sense? I mean, it was the realization that as a fan and someone who actually loved the series, I had to say yes. Even though there was no way I could write as good a book as he could write, I had to say yes, because then I would know that somebody who cared about it was doing it. And that was the real reason I wrote her that email the next day. I did start off with the line I just told you. I phrased it a little less stupidly. But I then went into it and I said, Harriet, I've realized something. I've realized that I do want to do this. And if Robert Jordan can't be here to write this book, then I need to do it. Because I promise you that I will give it the reverence it deserves, and I will bring this book to the readers, and it won't be about me, it will be about Robert Jordan. It will actually be about the characters. In fact, when Robert Jordan wrote it, it wasn't about Robert Jordan, it was about the people in these books. And I knew that I could bring a book that would be about the people. I wasn't sure at that time how would it even work. It was a very daunting task to even consider, but I knew that at least I would care. And that's why I sent her that email. And she sent me a very nice reply. And then I waited for a month. During this time, Harriet read my book, Mistborn, the first of my trilogy. She actually says that she got about 40 pages in, and that's when she knew. That's when she knew that she wanted me. And then she called me sometime in November, and she said, Brandon, I would like you to do this. And that's how I'm here. That's why me. That's the whole completeness of the story. How she found me in the first place had to do with that blog post that I posted, because a friend of hers printed it off and gave it to her. So I'm very glad that I did that. It was a combination of that and Mistborn and me really, really wanting it after it was offered to me. And so now you have the book. It is 1/3 of the outline that was left behind. I'm going to get you the other 2/3 as soon as possible. And we will go ahead and have Harriet do her reading now.
And I wasn't delaying to make him sweat. It was to be sure that I could find the very best possible writer in the world to complete the series, because I loved my husband very much and I knew him very well, and I knew that he wouldn't hesitate to come back and get me if I did a bad job. So I'm very grateful to Brandon for what he has done and for undertaking this enormous task in the first place.